You know, the best songs often come from a whirlwind of emotions, right? Whether it's fiction, nonfiction, or even somewhere in between. The heart and soul behind the lyrics are what make them so compelling. I'm a lyrics guy, always have been. In this episode, we're turning the spotlight on songs that were lit by frustration, anger, even heartbreak. From answering a critic who claimed a legend wrote silly songs, to calling out a cocky lover that became the biggest mystery in the history of recorded music, to voicing political frustration, and then one that ripped a former lover so deeply she asked him to change the lyric, but he wouldn't, and then she had to sing it next to him for decades when it became a smash. It's all here. It's a countdown of the songs in the key of diss, the top 5 diss tracks of the 70s, next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you got up at the crack of dawn to watch the Smurfs or Super Friends back in the day when you were a kid, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Click the white button. I've also been wanting to do this for a long time. We've got ProfessorofRock.com live. You're going to decide the greatest band of all time. We got the brackets. It's just like the Final Four. We'll get there soon. I think this week it's the Beatles versus Talking Heads. So go to ProfessorofRock.com to vote. All right, it's time to count down the top 5 diss tracks of the 70s. Songs in the key of diss. Let's get right into it. At number 5, I've got Queen's venomous scorning of their former manager and co-owner of their music publisher Trident Studios. It's called Death on Two Legs. Great song, B-side of Bohemian Rhapsody. Freddie Mercury wrote this song as a pointed message to Norman Sheffield, Queen's former manager and co-owner of Trident Studios. The band believes Sheffield had failed to give them the support they deserve, leading to their split with him before recording their seminal album, A Night at the Opera. A Night at the Opera, of course named after the Marx Brothers film, that was recorded over 4 months in 1975 at various studios. Now, frustrated by management issues that left them with little of the earnings from their earlier albums, Queen parted ways with Trident Studios. They avoided using Trident's facilities for the record, except for God Save the Queen, which had been recorded the year before. Now, Roger Taylor shared one really absurd moment when he told a story about he was told not to hit his drums too hard because new drumsticks were just too expensive. Meanwhile, Taylor noted, you see them, the management, cruising around in stretch limos, and you think, hang on, something's not right here.
But now you can kiss my ass goodbye.
The split with Sheffield was anything but friendly, and Death on Two Legs became the band's parting shot. It's a killer song. The lyrics are a scathing character takedown. It's just dripping with the band's full resentment towards their former associate, and it led to a lawsuit. I'll tell you about that in a sec.
You break the law and you breach through my brain till it hurts.
Now, interestingly, Freddie Mercury wasn't thrilled with the song after he wrote it. He thought it was a little bit too angry, a little bit too bitter, but Brian May stepped in and pushed him to see it through so that it would be recorded. Even though the song doesn't name him outright, Norman Sheffield still sued the band and the label for defamation. The case ended with an out-of-court settlement, which ironically made his connection to the song publicly known. Freddie Mercury later shared that his lawyer had warned him not to talk about the lyrics, but Mercury admitted that the song came from a very emotional place, and for him, music was the perfect way to express this frustration. On the album's track list, the song includes a subtle, dedicated to note. But Freddie Mercury wasn't so subtle during live shows. You have to mention Norman Sheffield by name before he performed it. That's actually the thing that got them sued. But it sounds like whatever the band had to pay was worth it to them to get it out there.
Part of the deal. Shock. Death on two legs.
As Brian May revealed in that documentary, The Days of Our Lives, great documentary, you should check it out. The band had signed a publishing deal with Trident Studios and then sold their records to a record label. Reflecting on it, he admitted that in hindsight, that it was the worst decision that they ever made as a band. Coming in at number 4 on our countdown of the top 5 diss tracks of the 70s is perhaps the ultimate breakup song of all time. Talking about Go Your Own Way by Fleetwood Mac.
You can go your own way.
Now, Lindsey Buckingham wrote this song as a pointed message to Stevie Nicks, chronicling their turbulent breakup. Now, the most direct jabs in this song come with the line, "Packing up, shacking up is all you want to do."
Shacking up, so you wanna do.
And the song ultimately concludes that he's better off without her. You know, she can go her own way. Now, Stevie pushed back. She insisted that she never shacked up with anybody while they were together, and she asked Lindsey to change the lyric, to remove it altogether. And of course, he refused. Lindsey crafted Go Your Own Way in a raw, stream of consciousness style. He was just channeling pure emotion, what he was feeling right at that moment. When he first played the song for Rumors producer Ken Calais, Ken wasn't convinced that it had any potential. He said Lindsey was pounding on his acoustic guitar like crazy and screaming at the top of his lungs, and I was somewhat alarmed the first time I heard it. I thought, what the heck is this? I mean, it sounded so chaotic and unmusical, I wasn't sure if it could go anywhere.
Go your own way.
Go Your Own Way, it came together while the band was holed up in a rented house in Florida during a break from their Fleetwood Mac tour. It was actually the first song Lindsey brought to the group for the Rumors album, and of course became one of the biggest songs ever. Now, Mick Fleetwood remembered that the house that they were staying at where they recorded this, or came up with it, had a seriously creepy vibe. He said it felt haunted, like it had a distinctly bad energy, which didn't help anything. At this point, the lyrics were not fully written, so Lindsey improvised by singing musical notes as placeholders in some spots in the song.
Tell me why.
Go Your Own Way, of course, the first single off the massive album Rumors, became one of the best-selling albums of all time and still going. Mick Fleetwood shared the behind-the-scenes process in an article in Q magazine. He explained that the song's rhythm started with Lindsey using Kleenex boxes, something similar to demo the tom-tom pattern. Mick admitted saying, I never really got what he was going for, so I ended up putting my own spin on it. Turned out to be a huge part of the song, though. A totally backwards approach that he says, I'm embarrassed to say came from me, just making do with what I could. Now, the bitterness in the verses of Go Your Own Way often get overshadowed by that upbeat chorus, which has a vibe of adventure and kind of independence, right? Over time, Fleetwood Mac leaned into this more positive interpretation, especially during their live shows where the song turned into a big stadium sing-along and still is. To think that Lindsey wrote this as a seething revenge song that ripped Stevie as a cheater, and then she had to sing this bitter classic side by side with him for decades, even with some fans not knowing how scathing it was. There is one part that really showcases the raw emotion behind the song. It's still there. It's Lindsey's guitar solo in the coda. Fleetwood Mac wasn't known for long solos, but Lindsey, he let loose during that breakdown. You could feel the intensity of his fury in every single note. Damn. But of course, Stevie would get even with her own song, Dreams. Of course, in the line, players only love you when they're playing. But still, it was pretty subtle compared to Lindsey's. All right, coming in at number 3, we've got an epic for you. It's a 3-part dissing suite by one of my favorite bands of all time, Pink Floyd, titled Pigs on the Wing Part 1, Pigs 3 different ones, and Pigs on the Wing Part 2.
For pigs on the wing, from pigs on the wing.
Pigs Part 1 is the epic opener to Pink Floyd's Animals album that was released in 1977, running over 14 minutes over 2 distinct sections. Roger Waters came up with the whole concept and he wrote the song. Each of the 3 verses represents a different pig. According to Roger, the first verse is Pigman represents businessmen in general.
Big man, pig man.
The second targets Margaret Thatcher, who was the leader of the opposition at the time.
Bust up right bad.
And the third is aimed at morality campaigner Mary Whitehouse, of course, calling her a house-proud town mouse who keeps it all on the inside. Whitehouse was a British activist who campaigned to keep questionable content off TV. Of course, Roger Waters felt she had no business telling others what they should or shouldn't watch. In an interview with Mojo magazine, Waters remembered the reason behind the dissing. He said she was everywhere, pontificating on TV, interfering in everyone's life, making a nuisance of herself, and trying to drag English society back to an era of Victorian propriety. Mary Whitehouse was a well-known figure in the UK when Animals was written, but Waters admitted to Mojo that listeners in America had no idea who she was. He recalled, everyone in the US thought it was an attack on the president, on Washington, on the White House, because of Whitehouse, because of the last name there.
Hey, you White House.
And I'm talking about the verses of Pig's three different ones in this part. Anyway, future United Kingdom Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher is mentioned in the malicious second verse of Pig's three different ones.
You radiate cold shafts of broken glass.
We've covered this before. The album Animals is Roger Waters' take on George Orwell's Animal Farm, where he divides humanity into three cynical categories: pigs, dogs, and sheep. The album only has 5 tracks, but each one revolves around these three different creatures representing society. Like all Pink Floyd albums, the music is full of cinematic drama made even more vivid with their recording innovations. Pigs features pig oinks, which were actually simulated by David Gilmour using a talk box. That was a first for Pink Floyd. Very cool. I think it's one of their most underrated albums. All right, we're to the bridesmaid position. At number 2 on our countdown of the top 5 diss tracks of the 70s, we got a lighter retort by one of rock's most prolific expressionists, Sir Paul McCartney, with his band Wings, with the monster smash Silly Love Song. Now, I don't love Silly Love Songs. It's okay. Put it here because I love this story. Silly Love Songs came from Paul McCartney's own soul-searching about whether he was putting too much emphasis on love songs. He once explained, and I quote, "Truth is, people are really sentimental, deep down. They might cry at a sentimental movie at home, but never in public. We don't like to show our emotions, and we often mock that. Same goes for love songs. People might not admit it, but that's exactly what they seem to crave." Silly Love Songs was actually Paul McCartney's way of pushing back against critics, including his former Beatles bandmate and collaborator John Lennon. He actually slammed Paul for writing nothing but silly love songs. Author Tim Riley points out that in this song, Paul was kind of inviting his audience to have a laugh on him, just like Elvis Presley used to do. In other words, it was his way of laughing back at the critics, including John Lennon. Paul would remember that people would often say, "Oh, he's always singing and writing love songs. He's so soppy." And Paul responded by thinking, "I get what they mean, but love songs have been around forever. I like them, and other people like them, and I've got a lot of love in my life, so if you want to call them silly, what's wrong with that?" Of course, that became the lyric.
And what's wrong with that?
He said the nice thing is that people are in the stage of their life with a couple of kids settling down. They tell them, "I used to think you were really soppy, but I get it now. I see what you were doing."
People wanna fill the world with silly love songs.
The intro of Silly Love Songs is another shrewd retort to the jealousy of a bandmate or an uppity critic. Now, the idea for the sound effect heard in the intro stems from another hurtful line in the press that stated that Paul had become a factory of empty love songs. So Paul, he turned it on his head. He cleverly produced a metal sound for the intro of Silly Love Songs, once again to have some fun with his detractors. The Steel Factory sound effect at the start of Silly Love Songs is a bunch of synthesized metallic noises made with a Moog synthesizer. It gives the intro this, robotic industrial vibe, mimicking clanging metal and machinery, playfully mocking the whole idea of a factory of silly love songs. Paul McCartney created a lot of music with his wife, Linda. She was credited as the co-writer on this song. She even became a member of Wings. Song, it's really sweet, with both of them singing I Love You in the chorus, which I think is also a funny touch. It creates a vibe that could easily come across as too much, but it never feels over the top, to me at least, because their love is so genuine. I mean, they shared a deep, unshakable bond, and they stayed together until Linda's death in 1998. I remember reading somewhere that they were only apart for 1 or 2 nights in their entire marriage. There's no question that they were soulmates. I love that the critics and his old bandmate, I love John Lennon, but they called him out for writing silly love songs, so he turned the tables on him and turned it into one of his biggest hits. It was massive. It became the biggest smash that he ever had with Wings, even bigger than any of his solo songs except for Say, Say, Say with Michael Jackson in '83.
Say, say what you want.
In fact, Billboard magazine named it the #1 song in 1976 after it spent 5 weeks at the top of the Hot 100 chart. It also topped the charts in Ireland and Canada, and it went to #2 in the UK. Worldwide, it was huge. The validation from the public was perhaps the ultimate diss for the critics that wouldn't leave Paul alone. He took the high road as he always does. He wrote a classy retaliation, and he gave music lovers exactly what they wanted in silly love songs. I think it's a cool story. All right, it's time to reveal the #1 track on our top 5 diss tracks of the 70s countdown. It's a song with a meaning that remains one of the best kept secrets of the rock era. Talking about You're So Vain by Carly Simon. You're So Vain, you probably think this song is about you. I mean, what a great lyric. And the verses that set up that chorus expertly tell the story of an egotistical lover who had his time with Carly, but blew it. Probably because he disrespected her and because he couldn't love anyone more than himself.
You probably think this song is about you. You're so vain.
The person Carly Simon is singing about in You're So Vain has never been officially identified. It's kept the mystery alive for so many years. Now, over the years, rumors have swirled, of course, names like Warren Beatty, Chris Christopherson, Cat Stevens, Mick Jagger, all being potential inspiration, especially since Carly had relationships with each one of them. Now, despite the speculation, though, Carly has always been elusive, and her story has shifted when asked about the song, which is a bit strange given the album title No Secrets. So, clear back in 1974, Carly did an interview with Modern Hi-Fi Music, and she said, and I quote, "You're So Vain is about a lot of people. I mean, I can think of a lot of people. The actual examples in the song came from my imagination, but the inspiration is from a couple of different sources. It's not just about one person." Now, the media and the public were pretty determined to figure out who this song was about, and Carly was happy to play along. It's one of the biggest songs of the 70s, so it remained alive. In a 2008 interview promoting her album, This Kind of Love, she admitted, "When I wrote the line, You're So Vain, you probably think the song is about you, that was definitely about just one person. The rest of the descriptions mostly came from my relationship with that person." Again, she goes kind of back and forth.
Don't you, oh, you had me.
Now, when Carly was promoting her memoir, Boys in the Trees, in 2015, she disclosed that the second verse, "You Had Me Several Years Ago When I Was Still Quite Naive," she said that one's definitely about Warren Beatty.
Years ago, when I was still quite naive.
She also mentioned that the other verses are about 2 different men, though she still refused to name them. As for how Beatty took it, Simon said, "Warren thinks the whole thing is about him." Richard Perry, who produced the No Secrets album, has his own take on the song's subject, but it aligns with Carly's explanation. In the record producer's book, he said, "It's about a compilation of men Carly had known, but primarily Warren Beatty."
You said that we made such a pretty pair.
Now, in a 2000 interview with Charlie Rose, Carly opened up about how You're So Vain came to be. She explained that it all started with a song that had the melody we know now as You're So Vain, but at first it was called Bless You Ben. The lyrics went, bless you Ben, you came in where nobody else left off. There I was by myself, hiding up in my loft.
He walked into the party.
But then after that, she hit a creative block. The song, it just didn't go anywhere from there. Then one day at a party, someone walked in and her friend said, doesn't he look like he just walked onto a yacht? Carly thought, that's interesting. She made a note of it, as great songwriters do. Later, while she was playing Bless You Ben, the original, on the piano, she swapped in the line, you walked into the party like you were walking onto a yacht, and everything clicked.
Like you were walking onto a yacht.
The exchange felt natural, and it flowed perfectly, and from there, Carly was able to dive into the profile of a man that she was writing about. That's when she knew exactly who she was talking about. It was on a cross-country flight, though, that Carly Simon came up with the now iconic line, Clouds in My Coffee. She actually named her box set after that. As she explained, the phrase represents the confusing parts of life and love, those things that seem enticing but are impossible to see through, much like a mirage that turns out to be a dry patch. She compared it to something you might find at the bottom of a coffee cup, like tea leaves or coffee grounds, something meaningful if only you could read it.
I had some dreams, they were clouds in my coffee.
The phrase actually came from Carly's friend and musical collaborator, Billy Murnitt. He was sitting next to her on that flight. Carly had the window seat, and as they gazed out, Murnitt noticed the clouds reflecting in her coffee. He pointed it out and said, look at the clouds in your coffee. And then he mentioned how it reminded him of a shot from the 1967 French film, 2 or 3 Things I Know About Her, directed by Godard. In the film, there's a striking moment where cream swirls in a cup of coffee and the image stuck with Billy.
Puisque je ne peux pas m'arracher à l'objectivité qui m'écrase.
Both Carly and Billy wrote the phrase down in their journals, and a few weeks later, Carly called them up and asked if she could use it in a song. And the rest, as they say, is history. So there's actually another part of the You're So Vain mystery that not many people know about. While most of the lyrics are seen as just creative writing, there's one line in particular that's very interesting. In verse 3, Carly sings, then you flew your Learjet up to Nova Scotia to see the total eclipse of the sun. Again, that could be heard as simply captivating fiction by Carly Simon. But the truth is, on Sunday, July 10th, 1972, not long after Carly wrote You're So Vain, there was a total eclipse of the sun, and Nova Scotia was designed as one of the best places to observe that specific celestial event.
To see the total eclipse of the sun.
Going back to the list of potential suspects as the primary subject for You're So Vain, you can actually take Mick Jagger off the list because Carly didn't even know Mick Jagger when she wrote the song, even though he actually sang the background vocals on the recording. And this was after Harry Nilsson, who was originally going to back up Carly, deferred to Mick because their vocal chemistry was just undeniable. So check him off the list. Then in February 2010, Carly dropped a hint, another hint about You're So Vain, who it's really about, to Uncut Magazine. She said, you know what? I'm just going to tell you this. The answer is on the new version of You're So Vain on my new record, Never Been Gone. There's a little whisper, and it's the answer to the puzzle. So a representative for Carly later confirmed that the name whispered in the song is David. Soon after, multiple media outlets speculated that the David in question would be David Geffen, who was running Simon's Elektra record label at the time that the song was released, and is one of the most powerful men in the industry. They connected the dots, thinking the song was inspired by her frustration with Geffen's focus on promoting her label mate, Joni Mitchell, who had written Free Man in Paris about him in 1973.
I was a free man in Paris.
Carly cleared up that confusion in an email to Showbiz 411, where she denied that Geffen was the David in question. I wonder who David is. She wrote, what a riot. Nothing to do with David Geffen. What a funny mistake. Someone got a clue mistaken for another mistake. She also pointed out that she didn't know Geffen when she wrote the song, adding, how can this guessing game stop without a lie? Anyway, in early 1973, You're So Vain shot to #1 in the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. By 1994, it was ranked as 72nd on Billboard's 50th anniversary all-time chart. At the 16th Annual Grammy Awards in 1974, the song earned nomination for Song of the Year, Record of the Year, and Best Female Pop Vocal Performance, the big three for a female. The secret of who Carly Simon was dissing in You're So Vain, I guess you could say it's been partially revealed, as Warren Beatty. But Carly continues to be close-lipped about the identity of the other man that she wrote about, her biggest hit and the #1 track in her countdown of the top 5 diss songs of the 70s. I'm curious to know if you guessed what my #1 song would be before we got there. Let me know in the comments below if you did. Let me know, what are your top 5 diss tracks? Again, these are the 70s. If you'd like to see more like the 80s, 90s, or the 60s, let me know and we'll cover it. One that I was going to put in my top 5, but we cover it in another episode of Professor of Rock, is an Aerosmith song that would have normally made it. Anyway, let me know your memories of these songs. And what do you think are the most scathing songs out there to rip anyone? I think these are kind of fun to do. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. Make sure to go vote at professorofrock.com. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.